Hello, ladies. Hello, welcome back. Okay, today we are going to talk estrogen. We are going to talk estrogen, especially after the age of 40, and we start to have these hormonal fluctuations where estrogen starts to decline. And we're going to talk about how that affects us and explain kind of the anatomy of the symptoms that you get as you start coming into perimenopause and postmenopause. But my name is Cynthia Williams. I am a nutritionist. I specialize in working with women 35 and older to help them understand these hormonal fluctuations, help them reach their composition goals, health goals, whatever that may look like, and just have a better understanding of what's going on so that you know how to pivot, you know how to maneuver, you know how to enjoy this part of our life and not just make it, there's so much negative put out there about menopause so that we just have this mindset that is going to be this terrible time. But the more educated you are, the more tools you have in your tool belt, it really doesn't have to be that bad. So we're going to talk a little bit about estrogen today, and I got 6 different jobs of estrogen and how the decline of estrogen and these jobs are affected and the symptoms that come with that, and what we can do about it. So first up is estrogen for women is anabolic, meaning it helps us to build lean muscle tissue. We hear of testosterone, especially when it comes to men and being able to build muscle and be, fit and healthy and strong. But for women, it is our estrogen. So as that estrogen declines, you start to see, or women start to see more lack of muscle. Like it just it feels like it's deteriorating. Like, where did it go? And it doesn't stay on as easy as it used to, and you have to work a little bit harder for it. So when we have that decline, that's why it's so important as we are aging that we are doing traditional strength training. We are training for strength. We're not doing our boot camp classes, Pilates, yoga. That is just not enough stimulus to cut it. You need to do traditional strength training. Not saying you can't put those classes in here and there, but your bread and butter needs to be traditional strength training, training for strength to continue to provide that stimulus to hold on to muscle tissue. Number 2 is estrogen promotes muscle contractions, meaning our strength and our power. Typically, we start to lose what are called type 2 muscle fibers, which are the ones that are responsible for power and strength. And you may think, oh, power and strength, how's that relative to me? I'm not a bodybuilder or whatever. You have to think about power and strength as far as stability and your ability to get up off the floor without assistance, your ability to lift and put things up on a heavy shelf, your ability to push or pull things. So everyday activities. And you may have already noticed that things that you used to be able to do 10 years ago, you have to ask for assistance now. And that decline of estrogen contributes to that. So again, we have to continue to do that resistance, that traditional strength training to help us maintain our lean muscle mass and promote new mass, because we don't have that estrogen signal anymore as strong as what we used to. We have to use external stimulus to make those connections in our brain to our muscle tissue to build that lean muscle. All right, number 3 is it supports mitochondria. Mitochondria, if you think back to your high school biology class, that is the powerhouse of your cells. And the stronger, the better, the more mitochondria we have, the more energy we have, the more endurance we have. It also helps with the mitochondria and keeping it strong to sweep out the free radicals, those bad bugs that are in our system. So when we don't have that connection, again, that communication of estrogen to the cells for mitochondrial health, we have to resistance train. Resistance train is going to provide that signal for us that estrogen no longer is providing. You have to remember hormones are little messengers. They do communication. So they have receptors. They have these little hormones floating around, and they have receptors stuck on the mitochondria, your muscle cells, your bone cells, whatever it may be, that they would go and attach to and talk to. And that we have this estrogen declining. We're having this decline in communication. Those receptors are not getting the information that they used to, which is why things start shutting down. So we have to provide those stimulus, that communication in another format, and strength training is a big way of doing that for women's health. All right, number 4. Estrogen is big for regulating inflammation in the body. We have 3 kinds of estrogen. We have E1, which is estrone, which is what you typically see post-menopause. We have estradiol, which is E2, which is our most abundant form of estrogen. And then we have E3, which is estriol, which is what you see during pregnancy. So estrogen or estradiol, E2, is the one that we speak of most when we're talking about perimenopause symptoms, postmenopause systems, that decline of estrogen. It's mostly related to this E2. And so E2 kind of keeps E1 in check. And when we have this decline of E2, the E1 can create havoc, basically, and inflammation in the system. So we want to, or it can lead to sore joints, impaired gut, fluid retention, some of those symptoms that we're starting to have, the slowed gut, the constipation, or the hyperbowels, holding on to fluid. That's one thing that I actually experience myself, is water retention, fluid retention that comes and goes. And then just inflammation. We're not talking about like sore tooth inflammation. We're talking about systemic inflammation in the body when we have that reduction. So that's where lifestyle is going to come in big time, with a high protein diet, a high fiber diet, walking, regular exercise, getting good sleep, and stress management to help with that hormonal balance and reduce the systemic inflammation. Number 5 is E2. Again, as I spoke of, it promotes insulin sensitivity, and you want to be very sensitive to insulin. Insulin is another hormone. Insulin is what we call a gatekeeper. It goes into the cells, it opens up the cells, and it pushes glucose, the food that we're eating, into those cells to be used for energy or whatever the body decides to use it for. And we have a decline, again, as we have lowered estrogen, we have that lowered communication. That's why our insulin sensitivity starts to decline with perimenopause, and then especially into postmenopause, because you have this decline of E2. So the best thing that we can do is have more muscle tissue, because the more muscle tissue you have, the more muscle cells that you have for the body to push glucose into. And when we have this decline in communication, if we have low muscle mass, we're not strength training, we're not having a high protein diet, we're not making those lifestyle switches, what it's going to do is start pushing glucose into the fat cells. And that's why you see that abdominal fat gain, what we call like that tire in menopause, perimenopause, and postmenopause women, due to the decline of insulin sensitivity and elevated cortisol levels that just promote abdominal fat gain if you're not doing the things to counter it: strength training, lifestyle factors, nutrition, etc. All right, and number 6, here's one that contributes to the weight gain as well, is estrogen is a control factor or a buffer of ghrelin and leptin. Those are our 2 hunger hormones. Ghrelin tells us we're hungry, leptin tells us we're full. When we have that decline message or that communication going to the both of those, we have more hunger cues and less full cues, which can cause us to consume more calories than we actually need. And you're gonna guess it. What are you gonna guess? What do you think I'm gonna say? The more muscle tissue we have, the more sensitive those signals remain, okay? And the more fiber we have, with the stronger gut that we have, the more sensitive those signals remain as well, which will help us to blunt the abdominal fat gain that comes from the declined estrogen and the declined communication with all these other hormones that we have in our body. So I hope this was helpful for you. You can find all my information at Cynthia Williams Wellness down below. I specifically work with women 35 and older. I have 3 different program options for you, so you can have a little bit of accountability, a little bit more accountability, or a whole lot in my one-to-one coaching. But you can find all that information below. And I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.